This video shows how to carve this pattern, in this case in a piece of red oak. This is the first pattern in the new set of drawings I've got, and for lack of a better term I call it the Tulip pattern, and I'll follow along those step-by-step drawings there and show you how I carve it. So I'll carve this pattern repeating a couple of times so the finished piece will be a box front. And it is 6 1/4 inches this way and 20 something inches there. I have marked out a margin top and bottom, and the space between those in this case is 5 inches. And I tried laying out 3 rectangles and opted for 4 squares. And the reason being, the rectangle was about 6 inches long, and it would result in a really long leaf to that main tulip, and I'd rather have it shorter. So I set the compass between the margins like so, and just will walk off 4 divisions there just by leaning on each leg as I come around, and then striking a square line with the square and the awl through those points. And now I'll do the diagonals, and it doesn't matter really whether you start the top or bottom corner. It's like making a big zigzag. And the next thing I need is a horizontal center line hitting those diagonals only. So that is 2.5 inches. Right there. And I used a marking gauge for that, just to scratch a little line there. Most of that'll get carved away. So now I can begin incising the pattern. So just use the gouge and I'll eyeball its relationship around that center point on that diagonal line, like that. That one might be a little lopsided. But that one too, so there it's even. I'll draw on here so you can see what I'm headed towards. And the first thing is this little, I'm looking at the notes, that little scroll right there, and it's polar opposite down here. But then I can put them in there as well. And where am I here? This comes to this inside. So, and that's V-tool work. And a lot of that is in my feet. Those come over the diagonal line. And like that. That. So now comes, you bring this sort of arcing around to bump up to that circle and out here and here. Oops. There. So you can continue it right from where you hooked it there on that curve. That. Like that. And the next thing to do is close those. So comes on the inside here, sort of a reverse curve to go into there. Oops. The chalk isn't terribly precise, but neither is my carving. Like that. And like that. So to pick this one up, you just put the V-tool back in it and then lower the handle right there just to come out of that cut. Now I'll do the reverse curve in this one. Like that. That's kind of fat. So I'll do that to these two blocks, and then we'll go on to the next step. I've picked out a slightly larger gouge than the drawing has. This is the 1 3/4 inch sweep by 1 inch wide, and it's to define those center petals. So just tipping it off of the center line there and striking it like like that. I had room, that's why I went to the bigger tool. On a smaller scale, you get similar sweep but a smaller tool. So that's all of those, and now comes the big leaves. Well, is that what happens next? Yeah. And they are from the top margin in this case, tucking just inside that shape, and then coming not to the center line, but near it, like that. And this is another reverse curve, so bending like that, and then sweeping down here like that. So you generally want the bottom of this one to be at the same height. I've drawn it lower, carve it a little higher. And it dies out at the margin. So here I'll begin with the tool at an angle and just come in like that, and now lower the handle to come out of that cut. Lower the handle here to start on that same point, and raise it up. And where am I? In relation to that horizontal center line, the bottoms of those are just above it. So in this case, just below it. When I'm carving with a camera in my armpit, it's sometimes easy to get lost. So I'll take the added step of drawing it in that case. Don't want anything to go wrong at this point. You can maybe hear I'm having to hit harder right here than when I was up here, and the difference is the growth rate. The oak is growing faster here than it was up there, and so this material is a little more dense than what's above. Well, I'm here, that margin comes out. And here. Not there yet. So the same tool that I did this leaf shape with, I'm going to strike in here and beside there. And you could do this with the V tool also. So that's just trying to connect to those V-tool lines. So I've just put the wings of the tool in those V-tool lines and struck that like that. And then a smaller tool, a 3/4 inch sweep and a 1/2 inch wide. That's what the paper calls for, but my lines here are too far apart. Those should come closer to the center there. So I'm going to have to go up to the larger tool to make that bottom leaf there. And this is the inch and 3/8 sweep by 1 inch wide tool. No, excuse me. Inch and 3/8 sweep by 3/4 inch tool. And that's why I didn't do that margin in that part yet. But here I can now do it. As technically the margin could come first, but that's not how I do them. So as you see me going here, I've deviated from the tools listed because of two things. The scale of what I'm carving is maybe different than what I drew, and that spacing. So if these leafy shapes had come closer to that center line, then it would have adhered closer to what I drew. But it's not fatal in any way. That's part of what a design like this is about. It's very adaptable to different proportions and different spaces. So let me go ahead and finish outlining these pieces, and then we'll remove some background and go from there. So the background removal is next, and for that I use this very shallow tool, which is an 1 3/4 sweep and 1/2 inch wide, a number 5 in the Swiss made system. And the first place I'll go with it is these gouge struck lines, and just working right up next to them, just take out the wood right beside them. And that, as I've said before, is sort of a safety for when I'm chopping out the stuff behind it. And so there it was hand pressure. Here I'm using my fingertips on the tool and a mallet. Here, maybe you can see it. Like that. You can do the same thing with this overhand grip with the tool in the curl of my fingers. Like that. So the heel of my hand is resting either on the board or on the bench. Now an underhand grip where I'm grabbing it underneath with my thumb on top. So you're switching from one posture to another pretty regularly. And this is where you find out if your gouge strikes are too shallow. You want them nice and deep for this. So your background will sort of make the carving stand out. Switched hands, but the same sort of notion. And for now, I'm not doing the V-tool stuff. And I might not bother with it. The V-tool work has enough depth to it that it should be okay. So now I'll go to the mallet and holding the tool at a bit of an angle like that, I'll start to chop this out and it'll break free at the V-tool work or where I've already cut around the gouge work. At this stage, I'm not concerned about texture. It's just removing the bulk of the material. Oops, I forgot these. So now, what do you do with that mess? I put the mallet down and I'm going to hand pressure to start to even those surfaces out a bit. Switched over to come this way. And this tool has a slightly crowned edge, which I find helpful in meeting all these curves. The last carving I did, I had to go over it a number of times to get the background to be pretty smooth without the facets. This one can have these facets. I'm going to hit it with a textured punch so it really won't show up anyway. And then maybe paint it as well. So I've still got the remnants of that V-tool line, and I can cut along it. I have to keep track of where the fibers are. So I don't want to cut this one in this direction because it would rip the fibers that way. But I can come like this. And then the fibers are all supported as I'm cutting them off. This is a piece of quarter sawn oak. Not the ribbon work I usually have. And so it has some tendency here and there to tear up a bit. But it's pretty good. It's more than pretty good. It's very good. I look for boards that are very straight grain and that are absolutely radial when I'm looking at that end grain. Hold fast is in the way there. So that's what I'm after, is a background like that. And I have plenty of chances to get it. So I'll go over those and then we'll pick up from there. Here's more of that background removal. So just taking those broader strokes and blending them all down to the depth of the V-tool line. Just taking the big facets and making them smaller facets. Oops, that wants to come this way. See, that's what I'm talking about. So I want to come down here to cut those off. Like that. And then this business here. So now there's a high spot right there where it's a facet below that and each way, and then you can just sort of catch that coming back this way and over that way to take that out. For those who've not seen this before, this is one of the tooth punches I use for the background, just cut out of a piece of mild steel and done with a small feather edge file to cut those teeth. There's nothing much to it. I use a hammer, not my mallet, and just kind of squeeze it in wherever you can. There's times when you just sort of tip it up to just get a corner of it, depending on where you need to be. Right in here, you can't really fit the whole piece, so you just lean it. Like that. Oops. To begin the details, I'll do the largest ones that fit in the leaves there on the tulip, or the petals, whatever they are. And it's back to V-tool work. So it's really just going to sort of echo that outline. That. Now, there's a couple sections that fit in here. One is a little volute right in the beginning. Just like that. And then I'll switch to the gouges, the 3/4 inch sweep, 1/2 inch gouge. And this defines a small leaf like that coming out of that volute. Like that. And then just a one strike of gouge to connect that leaf back up to that V-tool outline, like so. And that gives you a place to cut out that little bit of background. And then there's some accents inside those. Again, with that same gouge, I'll just do sort of fan out 3 strikes and cut a chip out behind every other one. Like that. And this is very small scale, so I can do just a little accent from the V-tool, curving up into the middle of that leaf like that. And that's what those need. Same thing, an outline. And that volute that rolls into here. Then switch to this gouge to make that one leaf, and then this one connects from that leaf back into the V-tool line. This tool, just to take that background down. Like that. So you have that little fuzz there. Just take the bevel of the tool to sort of push that back down just to burnish it a bit. And then these 3 strikes like that. Little arc from the V-tool there. This one just kind of dies in here. I'd like it to curl a little more, so I'll try to pick that up like that. That's a little better. These shapes on the diagonal line get a V-tool outline as well. Echoing the actual shape I had made. one version of this drawing, no, it's not this drawing, it's the S scroll, but it's similar, has that all cut out as background, which is simple enough to do. Here, I'll make a little pattern inside it with a couple of gouges. The gouge I've picked up to do this is this half-inch sweep and half-inch wide. So a fairly deeply curved but not terribly wide tool. And I'm just going to make a round shape up the top of this pattern that doesn't quite connect. It has a little bit of a gap there. So I'll switch to this 3/4 inch sweep, half-inch gouge again. And that connects back to the V-tool line. And depending on the size of the original shape, there's more or less room for this. But so it just makes a little tapered shape there with a round top to it. And then you just pop out that business in between. Like that. And I'm just using the corner of the tool there to get that out. So now I'm left with some solid space there, which has a little bit of room for some accents like that. It really depends on how much space you've got. I could have made those bigger. And same as before, you don't take out the background behind every one of those gouge cuts. I'll just do the top ones here. Like that. So there's the outline of that piece. And then with this gouge, I strike there and here. So it falls into that V-tool line, and try to leave a little connecting space there. I left very little. And then switch to the other gouge to do the other element of that comes down into the shape itself. And then with that shallow background tool, you're really just kind of taking the corner, digging it in to pick out that background out of there. And like that. And can't do this without getting in the way of the camera. Like that. And then the accents on it are just like that. And the punch right there. And these, just gonna keep my wits about me, these are pointing in this direction here. And above. That. Well, let's go for broke and see if I can do one of these without losing it. So I want to really tap these lightly. A little lopsided, but well, it's not beautiful, but it's done, and it has a little nick in it there, but I didn't break one off on that one. A squirrel running around on the roof. I frequently use this nail set for an accent like that, right in the tops of those bits, and can even put it in there and in there.